day, folks out there. This is 1360 KHNC Freedom Radio, and this is the Liberty Revolt. I am your host, Cole Masters, here with my co-patriot, Bucky Dillon. And today we are going to be talking about something that is near and dear to both our hearts, which is why we left the Democratic Party. Now, believe it or not, from what you've heard on this show, we both used to be staunch Democrats, and the Walk Away campaign has pulled something like 80,000 people away from the left toward the right. Now, I think the political climate in this country has created the conditions for such a switch, but really, we want to reach out to you guys who are listening today and ask you to call in with your own Walk Away story, if you have one. The number to call in is going to be 970-587-5171. Once again, that's 970-587-5171.
Good morning, everyone. Bucky Dillon here. Please visit us on our website at www.libertyrevoltmedia.com or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/libertyrevoltmedia. So, for the entirety of my life, I just assumed I was a Democrat. Why? I don't know. I guess it was just in the ether in the air around me. This narrative has penetrated so much of our society, and it's all been from one side. So my entire life, all I had heard was mostly from pop culture. I didn't really pay attention to politics. I wasn't watching the news at age 12. So I got most of my political information from my favorite rock and punk bands. You can imagine how that went. Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down. Their narrative had always been George Bush bad, Republicans are racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobic, warmongers who hate the poor, and the Democrats were the party of the minority and the party of the downtrodden. Well, how effectively have the Democrats lifted people out of poverty?
Well, it seems to me that if you look at the actual programs in place in major Democratic-run cities with not only the highest crime, but the highest poverty rates in this country, you'll see that there have been incremental changes, nothing on par with what the Democrats would have you believe.
You know, they're always complaining about wealth inequality. Do you know where the worst wealth inequality in the country is?
Why don't you tell us?
So, well, I'll tell you this. Second place is New York City, where they have some of the most progressive laws on the books. First place is Washington, D.C. I'll let you figure that one out.
Amazing. Wow. Who can imagine why there's such an inequality in Washington, D.C.?
So much of what the left is harking on and on and on and on about is what they see around them. The consequences of their own policies.
Yeah, so, you know, when you don't look very hard and someone kind of starts a fire and then you walk by and you see them putting it out, you might say something like, oh, what a good person, what a good Samaritan putting out this fire. You didn't see them a few minutes ago with a flamethrower laughing maniacally and, you know, setting the house afire. And that's sort of what the Democrats have been doing in inner cities for the past 30 or 40 years. Now, this is not something you're going to get from your high school textbook or from, God forbid, a college in the United States of America. These are the kind of statistics.
Our institutions of higher learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what's interesting to me is when you look at the demographics of teachers in high school, in middle school, they trend to be older, 30 to 40 females. And if you look at the statistical data for who Democrats are pandering to as their base, it tends to be 30 to 40-year-old white females.
That's actually really interesting. And, I think a lot of them don't have children. And this is something that my wife has been telling me because she was an English teacher at CSU's foreign department. And ever since she had a kid, she's been like, I think I want to reconsider my career because it was really great when she was single and she didn't have that many responsibilities outside of her job. And, she has to talk to her students and make her lessons plans and everything. But now that she has a kid, she wants a very structured, very simple thing, and the university doesn't seem to be where that's at. So it's really interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in fact, the university was one of the first things that turned me away from the Democratic Party because I was in the teaching program. I myself wanted to become a teacher, and in our classes, there was so much talking shop, and talking shop was basically talking about the inequalities in school. And schooling in the United States, a certain class that I had, was actually pretty much racism in school 101. Our textbook was entirely centered around injustice in the American public school system. And I said, guys, when are you going to teach us how to teach? Okay, thank you for teaching me not to be racist for literally 200 days out of my semester.
Don't teach us what to think, teach us how to think. And to your point, I saw an article this morning where they said that Virginia was going to be implementing lessons on slavery in kindergarten alongside the alphabet.
Oh my God. In kindergarten? You see, this is the kind of cognitive disconnect in universities. That's the one place you shouldn't have this sort of disconnect. And if you can't see the politicizing of the curricula a problem in universities, then, I don't think you really understand of what the point of universities are supposed to do. And they're not only supposed to teach you how to think, but university creates a place where different disciplines can have a conversation with each other, right? And that bespeaks the idea that we need to let different viewpoints also have a conversation with each other.
Right. I mean, diversity of culture, diversity of ethnicity, all these are great things, right? But what we really need is diversity of thought. What we really need is diversity of ideas. It's not multiculturalism to have a whole bunch of ethnically varying people saying the same exact message.
I mean, then what is the differences? If it's diversity of culture and race and all the ideas are the same, then where's the real diversity?
You're listening to 1360 AM KHNC Freedom Radio. You're listening to the Liberty Revolt, www.libertyrevoltmedia.com, facebook.com/Liberty Revolt Media. We're talking about why we left the left. We're talking about the State of the Union and some of the cultural issues going on in our country. A lot of the people on the left like to attribute everything going wrong with our country today to Donald Trump, lay it at his feet. And what I keep saying over and over is that Trump is not the thing that caused all this. Trump is the result. Trump is not the axe murderer over the bottom. He's the coronary declaring it dead.
Well, and if you look back at, the history of the presidency, in particularly Bush and Obama, I think we can agree that Bush screwed some things up. Particularly, I think he screwed up conservatism for an entire generation of people.
Yeah, we were talking about that just last night. I mean, and of course, we were looking through the keyhole of being young, ignorant people, and with the current events going on, I've heard mixed stories about whether or not the intelligence agencies actually had good information on whether or not there was weapons of mass destruction. But that's beside the point. From what we saw, from what my generation saw, was we got into a war and we never left.
And then the economy crashed. So we get into a big war. We have these new laws that kind of infringe on our personal liberties and start spying on us. And then the economy crashes. So, when the economy naturally starts coming back, because that's what economies do after they crash, they come back. Obama comes into office at the same time. So, of course, the Democratic Party said, oh, look at this. Look at our guy coming in here and kicking butt. I mean, that's the same fallacy and ahistorical analysis of the presidency that people use with Trump. As if, anything bad is going to happen, it's going to be Trump's fault. Just you say anything good is going to happen after, the destructiveness of George Bush is going to be Obama's doing. Then you've committed fallacious thinking. And it looks like that's what the left has done twice.
Trump is the body on the surfboard riding the wave of historical context in this country.
Ooh. What a way to say it. Yeah, so, I mean, we really do need to look at the government as a whole, and that's why people need to be chided into voting, for their local officials as well. Many people just go out and vote for the president, and then when something good or bad happens in the country, they blame singularly the president.
which is interesting. I mean, for example, the economy did make good strides under Bill Clinton, but what everybody forgets is that Republicans held the Senate and the House when those strides were being made. Bill Clinton wasn't putting forth bills and then signing bills. Those bills were originating in Republican Congress.
Who writes the bills? The
Right.
legislature writes the bills, you know?
It's interesting. And, you know, I think a lot of our generation probably voted for Obama under no context other than we assumed that the party of war was the Republicans, and we wanted to feel good about ourselves for helping elect the first black president, which I think in that sense, in and of itself, electing a black president was a good thing because it was a good milestone to say, look, anybody can achieve the highest position of power in this country. Anyone. Doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, right? His policies, the results of his presidency, that's a different story. But I think on that one aspect of it, I think a lot of people were behind. I actually think that's why he won. Is not because he spoke well, but it wasn't because of his policies. It was because of his image.
Right, and I think America at that time needed that image, and that's why so many of us were sort of galvanized into supporting Obama, whether we looked into his policies or not. And I do think that the social ramifications of the Obama presidency, spelled some progress in American society. I think it would be disingenuous to say it didn't,
Let's look at the results. Did the relationship between minorities and the police get better or worse? They got worse.
Well, if we look at the data, it's gotten better. But if we look at what's happening socially, it's gotten worse.
The narrative has gotten worse. The trust between communities and the police has gotten worse. Racial relations got worse. And they've actually polled people, how do white people feel about black people? How do black people feel about white people prior to 2008 and then throughout the course of Obama's presidency? And racial relations got worse by public opinion.
Now that's the court of public opinion, but I think, as something historical, as something that sets a precedent for at least social change with regards to the political offices of the United States, that this had some positive effect.
Right, that's what I was saying, because now people can say it's possible. Now people don't have that excuse that it's impossible, that it can't happen, that this country would never do that.
Exactly. It's not like the election of the first female prime minister in Pakistan, got rid of women being buried up to the head and then stoned to death for adultery in Pakistan. You don't see broad, sweeping social change coming from the election of one person. No matter what you see as a talking point on the television, it doesn't change what's happening on the ground, and that's what people seem to forget about Trump when they try to lay all their problems at the feet of Trump, and all the social problems too. People are saying, Trump got into office, he empowered the white supremacist people and women and minorities were being attacked the day after Trump's election, and this was all fabricated. We want to talk about fake news. That's actual fake news. There were not true criminal reports of these things happening on the scale that leftism would have you believe.
And they say that there's been this rise in hate crime and this, that, and the other. And what a lot of people have pointed out is that rise can be, and it's similar to the whole testing versus coronavirus cases situation. They actually set up a whole bunch more hate crime reporting centers around the country. Right? So they had a much more honest representation where originally there had been all these pockets where things were not being reported. Right? And it's interesting. The left seems, particularly the progressives, seem to act like if we just elect them, that they're going to bring the amounts of racism we have in this country down. Ironically, the highest recorded rates of racist incidents correlate directly with college campuses that have the strongest reputation for woke culture, right? They're finding racism everywhere because they're looking for it. Well, seek and you shall find.
If you really look at some of the classes and some of the ideas purported by the university system, it basically incentivizes you to find racism, sexism, microaggressions, and especially the patriarchy in every instance of societal action. I mean, when you look at postmodern philosophy, which dominates liberal arts from the top down, whether it's in literary theory or gender studies, you can see the incentivization of a power structure that doesn't necessarily exist with any sort of evidence. There's no evidentiary claims that these people make. It's all philosophical, saying, well, probably because you see mostly white men as CEOs, there's this giant evil conspiratorial patriarchy out to bring down women and minorities.
Right. They make the assumption that if it wasn't for some outside force acting upon society, that everyone would have equal outcomes, which is not true. Nowhere in the world, nowhere in history have we found that groups end up with equal outcomes, because every action has a different consequence, and it's all a collaboration of individuals and individual choices. And where you end up in life is where you take yourself. Yes, there are outside forces. Yes, some people are born with more opportunities than others. Thank God we live in a country, the least racist country in the world, with the most opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. And, one talking point lately that I think makes a lot of sense is that the individual is the ultimate minority.
Absolutely. And that's the problem with the LGBTQIARSP3T R2D2 movement, right? Is that eventually you're going to have to keep expanding these groups until it just comes down to the individual, which is where conservatives and libertarians have been standing the whole time.
Well, when you look at whatever it is, in-groups and out-groups, we tend to homogenize out-groups and say all these people are the same. But then within our in-group, we're like, man, I only like 3 of these people because all the other ones are so different from me. The only superficial similarities that we have are ones maybe of skin tone and supposed culture. But that doesn't denote you getting along with these people, you agreeing with these people, you seeing eye to eye with these people on certain issues at all.
Right. And that's where the intolerance of the left is so hypocritical and ironic. And everybody, they act like they're the party of tolerance. They are not. They are not the party of tolerance. They are not the party of grace. They are not the party of forgiveness. They are not the party of coexisting, right? They're the party of tearing everything down. They're the party of assigning class-based guilt to people, group-based guilt to people, right? And if we really look at it, part of the reason that they've been so dominant in our culture, that they are so blind to their own moral failings, is that they are so convinced that everyone else is morally deficient if they disagree with them, they refuse to talk to them. There's studies that have come out that have shown that, like, for example, on social media, progressives are something like 15 times more likely to delete or block people. And it's interesting because conservatives give charity at 4 times the rate, particularly the religious right gives charity at 4 times the rate than progressives. Progressives say we're going to raise taxes on the 1% and that's our way of giving back to the community. It's ridiculous.
Right. Well, if you can open up your wallet and, speak with your money, I think it's going to have a lot louder voice than you screaming at people on the street for not following the same ideological line that you do. But, it's all about theater. It's all about political theater and drama and kind of using these things as talking points without having anything to back them up. You notice that so many of the talking points on the political left about social justice right now don't have any evidence to back them up. I don't see these people spitting numbers. And when they do, conservatives...
They're selectively filtered to put America in the worst possible light, to put European history in the worst possible light.
It's a bad faith argument.
Right? So, and this is why, most young people are to the left. Because they understand marketing and public relations. They understand image. They understand Hollywood. Right? Whereas the right, the right is great at a lot of things. They understand the founding. They understand personal liberty. They understand the legitimate role of government. They understand that we need a strong military and operational control of our borders to be a sovereign nation. Right. They understand the economy. They understand policy issues. They really get it. But in public relations and marketing, they have failed so abysmally. They have handed over the institutions to the left. They've handed over pop culture to the left. They've handed over everything. All of our movies, everything has been handed over to the left. And that's why you can have people like Nick Cannon go out there and say that white people are a little less and that they're the real savages and that they're so insecure that we might lose our skin tone through the reproductive processes, that we can only act out of fear and evil, and keep his job.
Well, you know what? Let him keep his job. That's the thing. I don't care. Let Nick Cannon keep his job, but hey, let Stephen Molyneux keep his platform on YouTube. Let all these people who have been canceled from the social media platforms, especially on the right, keep their platform. If you want to keep Nick Cannon, that's fine. He can say whatever he wants about white people. I'm not going to be offended.
We're anti-cancel culture. We're anti-cancel culture. The solution to bad ideas and hate speech is more speech.
Better ideas.
Shine a spotlight on it. Because what happens when you cancel people is you just hush the conversation into behind closed doors. Right? Where it's not countered by anything. Right? People just get in little dark pockets where they say all the things that they want to say. Right? But that doesn't actually get rid of it. You're not going to get rid of everybody's bad thoughts by punishing and hating and abusing and canceling. You do it by reaching out to them and offering, hey, I'm your friend, I care about you, but here's where I think you're wrong, and here's why I think this is a better moral argument, and this is what I think is a more efficient policy.
Right. You said bad thoughts, and if something is bad by nature, it is the opposite of good, which is knowledge, which is wealth, which is all the things that are true. So if you have a bad thought, it stems, probably not from evil, but from ignorance.
You're listening to 1360 AM KHNC Freedom Radio. Was the cataclysm that brought me from the left to a independent conservatarian. Leading up to 2016, I was a progressive. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. The biggest source of my news was Facebook, and particularly that was Now This and BuzzFeed and Huffington Post and Bernie Sanders himself and all these really tech-savvy progressive companies that were really good at making those 3-minute animated clips with they have Carl Maza up there, some gay Latino guy speaking, and he's just, hey, look, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I thought it was pretty profound, and I bought into it wholesale. My life wasn't going the way I wanted it to go at the time, and to hear a bunch of people say, well, look, this society is so rigged against you. And I think there are elements of truth to that. The central banking system, the Federal Reserve, all these international corporations are doing whatever they can to accumulate as much power as they can, as quickly as they can, with no regard to anybody.
Absolutely.
Right? It's true. It's true. And there are some legitimate points to it that should be addressed. Right? And we as people on the right and people in the center cannot let the left dominate that conversation entirely. And it's the same thing with a lot of other issues. The same thing with healthcare, right? The right just keeps coming out and saying, well, maybe we could deregulate and just kind of let it solve itself. And most people are going,
it doesn't work.
That doesn't sound like a very good plan.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
And so by handing over a lot of these key issues to progressives and not commenting on them on the right has really lent itself to some of these issues.
Well, there's a journalist named Chris Hedges. He wrote a book called America: The Farewell Tour. The guy is a socialist, hardcore socialist, and he says that trusting our woes to the Democratic Party is going to spell the doom of America. He says it in his book. He says, if we, trust the Democratic Party to solve all our issues for it and vote out all Republicans, then we've basically just made ourselves a fascist state. This is coming from a socialist.
And we're not really balancing it out with any modern-day Milton Friedman. You ask anyone under the age of 30, they've never heard of Milton Friedman.
Right.
They have no clue. But he actually addressed so many of these things. He talked about healthcare. He talked about, monopolies and this, that, the other. But what really happened is I was a big time Bernie Sanders supporter, and leading up to 2016 election, when he was blatantly and openly robbed from the nomination by Hillary Clinton, and everybody knew it, I decided screw the Democratic Party. I was still anti-Trump, I was still anti-Republican, but on the evening that Donald Trump got elected, and you were there with me.
I was.
We celebrated. I don't know why, but I felt I wasn't a Trump supporter.
Neither of us were Republicans or conservatives. We were both Democrats celebrating the election of Donald Trump because of this terrible media environment and them once again taking the nomination from Bernie, which happened again this time.
Right. It's so funny to see the Democrats trying to embrace the mantle of we're against rigging the system.
And then
what a joke.
What do they do? Well, and I swear to God, I think most of the political Democrats who are lining their pockets with corporate money, like all politicians, are just seeing fat stacks go into their bank accounts from lobbyists, are way more scared of Bernie Sanders than they are of Trump. They say, oh, here's a guy who's serious. Here's a guy who's going to try and break up the system of me getting money from lobbyists.
They're informed enough about the history of socialist movements to know it's not going to uplift the poor, but it's going to destroy them.
Oh, absolutely.
He's not going to uplift the poor. He's just going to take a wrecking ball to business. It's so interesting. But as time went on, so I got into an argument with my grandfather, and I told him that I was a socialist, and he got offended. He got hurt. I could see it. He was concerned. And I remember he tried to point out to me, look, it doesn't take into account human nature, right? And it doesn't take into account that this has been tried all over the world. Well, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was what now this told me, right? So I just got emotional. I got angry. I decided to myself that this guy's just an idiot and a racist. My grandfather, who's been loving me since I was a child, right? I've never ever seen him do anything that I would consider morally deficient on any significant scale. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, but we're talking about good people, right? I hope, and I mean this to the depths of my heart, my life goal is to live a full life with my wife and someday be in the position of my grandma CJ and my grandfather Walt, because I think that they are outstanding examples of how I should live my life and where I would like to be in my relationship and with my wife, in my relationship with God, and in my relationship with my community when I'm older.
Well, anyways, this tells you something.
Let me finish.
Sorry. Keep going.
So I remember storming out of their house angry and feeling ugly and jaded for weeks and just thinking, how dare these people, right? And for at least a month or two, every time I'd go over there for whether it was some kind of family event, they lived right up the street from me, so every time I'd go over there, I could tell that they were trying so hard not to touch politics with a 10-foot pole. Meanwhile, the heat in society in regards to politics has been turned up to Spinal Tap 11, right? And I got a job as a touring drummer, and I started traveling around the country and visiting all of these little red states, right? All of these little country towns all over the country, and actually meeting the middle America white working class in the bars, Fridays and Saturday nights, all across the country, and saying that these are hard-working patriots that want what's best for their family, want what's best for the world, respect God, and just want this country to be strong and want opportunity to work and make something for themselves, right? And that they're not these backwards racist hillbillies that I had been hearing about. And then when I was sitting in the van from anywhere between 8 to 14 hours per trip across the country, I was so determined to prove my grandfather wrong that I wanted to understand conservative thinking. I wanted to understand, because I I didn't think. I knew Donald Trump was a racist.
Of course.
I knew that he was a sexist. I knew that he didn't want to build a wall because he wanted to strengthen America's place in the world and American society. He wanted to keep out the Mexicans. So I started listening to him actually speak. And when I heard him speak, I was like, this guy wants America to be rich. Like, what he's talking about, he's saying, listen, your schools are failing. Your jobs are being sent overseas. People don't want to invest here because the tax rates are too high, right? People are afraid to speak their mind because political correctness.
Well, he's running as a populist. He's going on populism. In populism, what the left ignores about populism is that they completely ignore the white working class, which is huge in this country.
Right. They're populism for New York and LA. You're listening to 1360 AM KHNC Freedom Radio.
So Dylan, you were talking about kind of how you walked out of there with a disdain for your grandfather, who's been nothing but loving your entire life, right? And I think this really says something about the psychic undercurrent of leftist thought in mainstream society, is that we are supposed to demonize people who we see as possibly being racist, sexist, blah, 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 have any ism,
Of
classism.
committing wrong thought.
And we do this without any evidence. This is what I'm saying. We're saying, oh, well, the fact that you don't like socialism or the fact that you're a conservative is evidence in itself that you are under the influence of one of these isms. And I mean, this is malarkey. I'm sorry, that's what it is. Because
Joe Biden's on the case, ladies and gentlemen.
It's crazy to make these assumptions about someone. It's no different than actually being racist or sexist or whatever ist you want to call yourself, because you're prejudging, you're being prejudiced without any evidence. So it's no different. And I think the left, for me, it always had this undercurrent of strangeness, of pushing the boundaries while simultaneously trying to censor the boundaries, right?
Right. The right wants to put everything in boxes, to organize things and put borders between things and keep things in their own little spots, and the left wants to tear down boundaries and let everything flow into each other on a psychological level.
Right, and basically, when this comes down to it, this is almost saying that nothing has any meaning whatsoever. When you get down to postmodern thought and the ideas that inform contemporary progressivism, they boil down to nothing has any meaning whatsoever, which in of itself is a total paradox, right? Because if nothing has any meaning, then the left can't contrive any arguments for themselves any more than the right can. Everything's a free-for-all. We may as well burn it all down. Oh, wait a minute.
Right.
We're actually
It's so
seeing
interesting
this,
how they've managed to combine postmodernism with critical social justice theory and Marxism into one just hideous, tyrannical package.
And it doesn't even make sense. And no one, if you ever sit down and read, sit down and try and read Jacques Derrida, and you are going to be just punching yourself in the face trying to knock yourself unconscious, because this is the most turgid, terrible prose of any genre I've ever messed with. I mean, you can understand it if you have a PhD in linguistics, and even then you realize that you can make whatever you want of it anyway. So it's basically nonsense. And when I left the left, when I truly said that this party's not for me anymore, is after I started studying all these things in university, it made me leave my major. I left teaching in university and went to natural resource tourism. I just wanted to live in the woods. These people alienated me so badly from academia that they made me want to get a job in the woods and never think about the idea of meaning again.
You literally fled to China.
I literally fled to China. This is what I did. It screwed up my psyche so bad that I switched my major, graduated, left the country to China, and I'm only back because of the pandemic. This is what leftism did to me. I mean,
So again, please call in with your walk-away testimony. 970-587-5171. 970-587-5171. So I started having an open mind to conservatism. And it was weird when I can't even place the exact moment. But somehow I took the blinders off. This cognitive dissonance that is embedded in the ideological possession going on around our country with this far leftism had put me in this place I literally could see things and hear things without saying them, without hearing them. And so at one point I listened to a conservative speaker, and it was Ben Shapiro and Thomas Sowell and Larry Elder and Walter Williams and a little bit of Jordan Peterson and all of these other people, and I actually heard conservatism for the first time. And I think Dan Crenshaw really articulated it correctly, that at the foundation of conservative thought is gratitude. They have gratitude for our country. They have gratitude for our traditions. They have gratitude for the progress that we have made. And they have a logical end goal. You're listening to 1360 AM KHNC Freedom Radio.
If you've been following the news cycle like me, you're probably a little more anxious and not sleeping quite as well as you could be. I get you. That's why I use the products from my trusted friends at 420 Friendlies. 420 Friendlies offers great deals on 100% locally made glass clothing and smoking accessories. I have been loving the mental and physical health benefits of their extensive line of CBD products, including sodas, candies, lotions, salves, capsules, and more. My personal favorites are the sodas. I love CBD lemonades and colas, and I can tell you from first-hand experience, nothing works better to relieve pain and facilitate a healing sunburn than a batch of 420 Friendly's CBD salve. If you have headaches, insomnia, joint pain, anxiety, CBD products from 420 Friendlies are truly incredible, and so are the staff. I've been shopping and doing business with them for years. I trust them and enjoy them. They're experienced and knowledgeable, and that's why I shop exclusively at 420 Friendlies for all my smoking, vaping, and organic alternative needs. Again, they are located at 6628 West 10th Street in Greeley, just east of the King Soopers. Find them online at 420 Friendlies in Greeley, or call them at 970-451-5004. That's 970-451-5004. You can trust my friends at 420 Friendlies in Greeley, Northern Colorado's premier head shop. Tell them that Bucky Dillon sent you.
And thank you so much, Kara, for calling in. And I find it imperative to hear people's stories like this, that, you know, people's parents stop talking to them or cannot, right, cannot jive with them ideologically at all on one side. And that's the same thing. It seems this always comes from the left to the right.
Right, and our very first episode was actually about how to get engaged in the culture war. That's kind of what this Liberty Revolt is all about, is how can regular, independent, libertarian conservatives, as I call it, conservatarians, get involved in the culture war and reach out to people and actually break that cognitive dissonance. You need to speak on moral grounds. That's where they're coming from. Right? They're all of their arguments aren't based in policy sustainability, policy effectiveness. It's all based in what they think is the moral thing to do, which is often, if something is ineffective and unsustainable, it's going to be immoral eventually, regardless.
It's going to create conditions for immorality is what it's going to do. So what you're doing with sustainability, even if the means don't look so great in the beginning, is creating the conditions for morality, which is very important. And we've actually got a lot of articles about this very thing at our website, libertyrevoltmedia.com. And if you want to watch our official walkaway testimonies, we have a link to our YouTube there, and we'd like for you guys to check those out. It's kind of this episode distilled into a couple minutes of testimony.
Right, and we've also been doing community chats primarily with other individuals from the walkaway movement. And what this looks like is Friday nights from 7:30. It was supposed to be 7:30. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty on this last one. But we're going to be doing community chats with former Democrats, and we're going to be doing community chats with current Democrats. Because honestly, this country needs both sides. We need progressives pointing out disparities and discriminations, and we need conservatives pumping the brakes, taking the heed of Edmund Burke and saying, look at how the French Revolution turned out. Look at how the rise of the Soviet Union and Russia turned out. Look at the Cultural Revolution in China, how that turned out. Look at Venezuela. Look at all these places where these left-wing ideas have been implemented and the results they've brought.
Sure, and I mean, this creates a conversation that allows for a united front. And honestly, what do the elites, what do the cabal of kleptocrats who want to, shove corporate money down your throat and then feast on taxpayer money fear most? They fear a united front.
Yep, they fear progressives and conservatives and libertarians and Republicans and Democrats all having conversations with each other and not disdaining each other, not disowning each other, not castigating each other, but actually saying, you know what, maybe 10 years down the line, your idea is going to come in really handy. Your moral compass is going to be useful, because as we move forward through time and as we look back at the history of the United States and the history of the world, we will need progressive thinkers. We will need conservative thinkers. Reminding everyone, hey, let's not tear down our whole society in the process of addressing these injustices.
Right, and I think people would be surprised at how maybe liberal I can be on many issues. I don't talk about that here probably because this is conservative radio station, right?
But we should.
I want to have these debates. I want to have these arguments because political independence is what moves the needle forward, right? New political parties are created out of carving out ideas between the existing parties, and that's what political independence does.
So please reach out to us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/LibertyRevoltMedia. Please reach out on us on our website, www.libertyrevoltmedia.com. Please lend us your voice, become a contributor, or just comment in the comment section. Let us know. We want to talk to you, our community. We love you. Have a wonderful Sunday. This has been the Liberty Revolt on 1360 AM KHNC Freedom Radio.